Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a chilling, incredibly intense 12-hour procedural investigation. We're looking at the exact steps that led to the capture of 58-year-old Stephen Matthew Wolfe. Honestly, it's a total masterclass in detective work, led by a seasoned undercover investigator named Matt Pitcher. We are going to explore exactly how police cornered a man who might just be one of Florida's longest active serial killers, using some brilliant forensic methods and high-stakes psychological tactics.
Okay, let's dive into this with a terrifying realization that came directly from Detective Pitcher himself. He said, and I quote, "This guy cannot be on the street." That really sets the stakes for exactly what law enforcement was up against here. They weren't just hunting some random suspect, they were tracking a seasoned, highly active killer. Pitcher knew almost immediately that if they didn't get this guy locked up fast, someone else was going to get hurt. The pressure they were under was just absolutely immense.
Part 1. The Gruesome Discovery, and a Race Against Thanksgiving.
Let's set the scene for a second. It's around 2 p.m. near Vodka Bridge down in Marathon, Florida, right before the massive Thanksgiving holiday tourist rush hits. A fisherman calls 911 after noticing a strong odor and discovers an unclothed, brutally assaulted female body just off the highway. When Detective Pitcher arrives, he immediately starts following what is literally a trail of breadcrumbs. There are fresh tire tracks right off US Highway 1, strands of blonde hair indicating the victim was dragged, and broken branches from a small tree that had just been snapped. But the absolute smoking gun? Pitcher finds a 3x8-inch black piece of a vehicle bumper sitting right there in the dirt. This was huge because it proved the killer's vehicle was actively damaged as they sped away from dumping the body.
With the scene locked down, the entire investigation basically hinged on two massive, urgent questions. Who is this woman, and who did this to her? Now, Pitcher was terrified that the impending Thanksgiving rush would cause local businesses to overwrite their CCTV footage, right? So he makes a brilliant tactical decision. He splits his team. Half the officers go out to secure the video evidence from literally every nearby bar and business, while the other half canvasses the town with a photo, just desperately trying to put a name to their victim before the trail goes cold.
And the speed of this investigation, it's just staggering. At 2 p.m., the 911 call comes in. By early evening, that canvassing pays off. Local bartenders and a restaurant employer identify the victim as 51-year-old Michelle. She was a really kind-hearted mother and former therapist from Wisconsin who had fallen on hard times. And amazingly, by midnight, just 10 hours later, police track down a black and silver Dodge conversion van completely linked to the crime.
Part 2. Tracking the van and building the suspect profile.
So the pivotal moment actually happens when a local narcotics expert looks at a photo of that black bumper piece and identifies it as belonging to a full-size van. Officers scour the CCTV footage, spot the damaged conversion van, and run the plates. They uncover its owner, 58-year-old Stephen Matthew Wolfe. And let me tell you, the moment they pull his record, the blood just drains from the room. Back in 1976, at just 15 years old, Wolfe murdered a 78-year-old man during a robbery in Boise, Idaho. A year later, he famously escaped from the 4th floor of the Ada County Jail by sawing through a bar and literally climbing down using tied-up bed sheets. Add to that a formal diagnosis of psychopathy, animal cruelty, and heavy drug use. Pitcher immediately realizes they are dealing with a deeply disturbed, highly capable predator.
So the crucial point is 15.5. That is the exact number of years Stephen Wolfe actually served for that first murder. Because he was convicted as a juvenile, he got out. Think about that for a second. That means for the next 4 decades, this diagnosed psychopath was entirely free to roam, living out of his van, potentially leaving a trail of unknown victims in his wake. The terrifying takeaway here is how a blind spot in the justice system regarding juveniles can leave a known, diagnosed predator completely free to roam our highways.
Part 3. The Interrogation Strategy. A psychological chess match.
By midnight, police locate that van parked near a Kmart plaza. They pull Wolfe out, and shockingly, he doesn't fight back at all. He is unusually calm. Pitcher knows that physical evidence alone might leave room for reasonable doubt in court, so he prepares his strategy. And seeing exactly how a master interrogator operates is just fascinating. Pitcher has a very specific playbook. Step 1, he doesn't even mention the crime for the first 3 minutes, just to lower Wolfe's guard. Step 2, he cleverly disguises a visual check of Wolfe's hands for defensive scratches as casual small talk about his tattoos. And surprisingly, Pitcher finds absolutely 0 scratches on him. Finally, step 3, Pitcher takes Wolfe outside for a cigarette, physically changing the environment to shift the power dynamic and start breaking his resolve.
During all this, Pitcher intentionally uses physical touch, like gently patting Wolfe on the shoulder, to build a false sense of rapport. And it works almost too well. Wolfe, again a diagnosed psychopath,
actually develops this bizarre, one-sided emotional bond with Pitcher. When Pitcher touches his shoulder, Wolf literally says, "I don't let people put their hand on my shoulder because of prison. No, I like it when you do it." Wolf actually started viewing Pitcher as a friend, which put him in this incredibly awkward mental position of wanting to please the detective.
Part 4. Unraveling the Lies and Exposing the Alibi.
But despite this false bond, you have to remember Wolf is still a seasoned criminal actively trying to beat the system. At first, he casually claims the damage to his van happened because he was just turning around at Vodka Bridge trying to find a place to sleep. Then, out in the smoking area, he shifts his story entirely. Now he insists he merely helped cover up a murder that was committed in the back of his van by Michelle's ex-boyfriend. And this brilliantly illustrates how an elaborate lie can just crumble. Pitcher asks Wolf to describe this supposed killer ex-boyfriend. Wolf describes a young, skinny kid in his 20s with pin-straight black hair. The problem? Detectives had already tracked down the actual ex-boyfriend. The real ex was an older guy, heavily built with short gray hair. Wolf's description wasn't even close.
And while Pitcher's in the interrogation room, his team outside is completely shattering Wolf's timeline. Local tipsters start coming forward, revealing Wolf was actually driving around with people right before the murder. They tracked down a man named Terry, who was a friend of Michelle's. Terry absolutely despised Wolf and hated the fact that Michelle was staying in his van. The ultimate nail in the coffin? Police pull the phone logs and prove Wolf was on the phone with Terry just 5 minutes before the murder is believed to have taken place. Wolf wasn't some innocent bystander who just happened to pick up hitchhikers.
Part 5. The Final Evidence and the Forensics Breakthrough.
Armed with a completely shattered timeline, Pitcher drops his friendly, empathetic facade entirely. The forensic team finishes processing the search warrant on that Dodge conversion van, and the results are just undeniable. Pitcher walks back in to confront Wolf with cold, hard physical evidence. Because the discoveries inside that van were truly horrific. Investigators found the victim's blonde hair, alongside multiple pairs of various women's underwear. They uncovered a homemade bed built right into the floor of the van, where Wolf had failed to completely clean up blood on a cushion hidden beneath the sheet. Most disturbingly, they found 8 to 12-inch homemade toys. The autopsy revealed Michelle wasn't just murdered, she was tragically tortured, and these items were used in the assault that ultimately caused her to bleed out.
And remember Wolf's elaborate stories about hitchhikers and violent ex-boyfriends fighting in the back of his van? Well, the forensics absolutely obliterated all of that. Despite his claims, investigators found exactly 2 DNA profiles in that van and on the horrific evidence. Stephen Matthew Wolf and Michelle. No one else. The science proved definitively that Wolf acted entirely alone.
This incredible 12-hour sprint of methodical police work totally paid off. In 2023, based on Detective Pitcher's flawless procedural strategy and those undeniable, horrific forensic findings, Stephen Matthew Wolf was convicted of first-degree murder. The sheer brutality of the crime was so severe that it resulted in a very rare, unanimous recommendation from the jury for the death penalty. Wolf is currently sitting on Florida's death row.
But as we wrap up this explainer, we are left with one deeply unsettling question. Are there more victims out there? Detective Pitcher is 100% convinced there are. When you factor in the 4 decades Wolf spent roaming the road, the unidentified blood found in his van, and those multiple pairs of stolen women's underwear, it paints a truly terrifying picture. Wolf is taking his secrets to the grave, leaving us to wonder, how many other families are out there completely unaware that they cross paths with Florida's longest active serial killer?